Well, 4 months ago, war returned to the Middle East with a surprise attack by Palestinian terror group Hamas, which killed more than 1,200 people and wounded thousands more in land assaults and airstrikes. And the images of those attacks were truly frightening and disturbing. Hamas fighters also took dozens of Israelis hostage. This attack was clearly in the planning for months and was timed for the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War from 1973. And so in response, Israel ordered a complete siege of Gaza as troops battle to eliminate Hamas once and for all. Today we speak to our Israel correspondent, David Silva from Out of Zion Ministries. Hi, David. It's good to have you back on McBLOG. 4 months ago, this horrific attack occurred. Has that been does that seem a long time ago, or does that seem like just yesterday?
Yeah, good question, Bob. When you say 4 months, it sounds like it's not so long a time, but it's been 4 months of really, a situation that the country's never had to experience before. So in some ways it may have gone quickly, but in other ways it's been grueling. And of course we all want to see an end to it, but that's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think.
Now, the news that we were hearing through New Zealand sources was that Hamas were offering a ceasefire. Is there any truth to that, and could you rely on that?
Yeah, there was truth that it's been in negotiation by Qatar and Egypt. America, of course, was involved in that. It's been going on for a week or more now. Hamas gave a proposal yesterday, which was just totally ridiculous. They wanted it to last for like 3 periods of 45 days. So that's 135 days. They were going to release the young woman, the children, there's only 2 or 3 children, I think, the older people and anybody who was sick. And they wanted, I think, 500 terrorists released from our prisons in the same kind of categories. And then the next 45 days, they would release the males, the men who are alive. And they wanted 1,500 males released from our prisons again. And then the final stage would have been to exchange dead bodies. And I think there's I don't know who's got the most, but actually we probably have more than they have, because we took a lot of the ones who were killed on the day into Israel. But they also demanded a total ceasefire, which would be permanent in the end, and all of our troops to be removed from the Gaza Strip, no surveillance, so we wouldn't know what they were up to. And in small print, they even wanted to stop Jews and possibly Christians as well, I would say, visiting the Temple Mount. So just an hour ago, our Prime Minister officially turned that down. So at this point in time, there's no deal.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating that they're not very good at maths, because it's always kind of like release one Israeli hostage for about 20 Palestinians, and they sort of say it without even blinking. It's an interesting.
Well, I mean, we gave them 1,016 for one in the case of Gilad Shalit, and one of those who was released is Sinwar, who is now the head of Hamas in Gaza and is really responsible, hands-on for what happened on October the 7th and for what's been happening since.
So just remind us how many
one for one would be, one for one would be relatively fair, and I like that idea of giving the same kind of people backwards and forwards, but not the numbers. And one of the people who they are requesting to be released has 54 life sentences. So obviously he killed 54 people, and they want him to be released. And what would happen, Bob, is we've the Israeli military has taken out at least 10,000 of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad operatives. But if we release this 5,000 or 6,000 that they want, it would almost immediately, it would fill up their, it would recreate their army again. And they've already said they openly admit that they'll do it again and again and again. So they really do need to be removed. And the Prime Minister, just in his speech that he gave a little while ago, said that Israel will continue until we achieve the goals that include somehow the return of the hostages and the defeat of Hamas. One of the possibilities Israel's putting forward is that the leaders would be permitted to leave the Gaza Strip, and we won't do them any harm. They'd have to go to a third country, and that, of course, would for a time anyway, it would remove Hamas from control of the Gaza Strip. But I'm sure younger people would come in sooner or later and try to fill their shoes. But I'm not sure that they would submit to that condition.
And can you just remind us how many hostages are still held by Hamas?
Yeah, I get reports between 132 and 136, and just in the last 24 hours or so, they're saying at least 100 not at least 100 32 are dead for sure, and their next of kin have been informed of that, and a possible another 20 have also perished. So that makes it about 80 perhaps are alive.
David, one of the commentaries, especially from the left and from the media, but also I hear it within the Christian community, is that the response of Israel has been disproportionate. What's your response to that?
Well, the response again, Bob, is that the numbers may look disproportionate, but what they did. We are going primarily after terrorists, and sadly, there are innocent people caught up in that. But when they came in, they purposely aimed for just regular citizens, babies, children, older people, civilians, and had they been left to carry on what they were doing, they would have killed thousands of people. Maybe their stated goal is to destroy Israel. So what do you do? Do you let them do that, or do you do whatever it takes to try to stop them? I mean, if someone wanted to wipe out New Zealand, what would you do? You have to stop them. If there's someone out there that wants to finish you, you have to deal with that. I think the problem is the Western world doesn't really understand that mentality. They maybe think they're just joking when they say that. But when this motto they're using at the moment, from the river to the sea, what they mean, and a lot of people don't even know. They go to these demonstrations, they don't even know what river or what sea, but they're talking about from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, and that leaves no place for Israel.
In terms of Israel, is it? 4 months on, is it sort of back to normal? Is there tourism going on? Have families got back to normal life?
No, they haven't, and Bob, I don't know how they ever will. I mean, there are 1,200 families that have lost. On October the 7th, 1,200 families lost somebody, for at least one member of the family. Some of them lost several members, and there's 560 soldiers. So there's 560 families who have lost sons or uncles or fathers, brothers. So that their lives will never be normal again. We see the funerals almost every night. And the children, one of our own granddaughters, a young girl, is suffering from, trauma problems and she doesn't really understand too much about what's going on, but enough to have really freaked her out. So it's going to take a long time for Israel to get back to normal. I think there's at least 200,000 people evacuated from their homes on the northern border and down along the Gaza border. We don't know when they'll be able to go home. They're saying that they won't even be allowed to go home until the threat from Hamas and the threat from Hezbollah, who are located behind my head up there in Lebanon, until that's gone. So that's another issue, is what do we do with Hezbollah, who are far more heavily armed than what Hamas were.
Yeah, and for our viewers, just to remind them that you are up the north of Israel, and so you're more at threat from Hezbollah rockets. Is that a ongoing threat?
It's definitely an ongoing threat, and there were 33 rockets fired throughout Sunday,
Oh,
and there's been like almost every day, constantly, there's rocket alarms going off. Not where I am, but further up north, and we're talking 30 to 50 kilometers away, so it's not that far.
mm,
And those missiles, they can get here in between 30 to 60 seconds. We have heard explosions.
mm.
I'm sitting right now on top of Mount Carmel. So right, as I said, right behind me, 30 kilometers away is the border with Lebanon.
Wow.
So it does pose a real threat. And also Haifa has Israel's only oil refinery. It has a major electrical power plant there, and there's a lot of industry, a lot of chemical tanks, and a lot of factories that make ammunition and rockets are up here in the north. So Hezbollah poses a real threat, and we are being warned daily that it's getting very close and that we need to prepare ourselves for at least 72 hours, no electricity, no water, not able to leave our homes. It hasn't happened yet. Of course, we're praying that it won't, but it could happen literally at any time.
Yeah. Of course, the UN affiliated group, the Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, the news broke that some of their staff were involved in the Hamas attack, and it's believed that about 10% of that group are direct affiliation with Hamas. Interestingly enough, I was monitoring that news, and it took about 3 days to actually find its way into the New Zealand mainstream media. And of course, we fund that. Fortunately, we've withdrawn funding. Did it surprise you that a UN group would be guilty like that?
No surprise at all, because we've known that for years and years and years, and it's pretty obvious, Bob. Because unless I'm mistaken, I would say that most of the workers, maybe not the higher level, but most of the workers would be local people who are Muslims, and obviously their sympathy is going to lie with their own people. And way back, and when was it? 2006, I think it was, in the Second Lebanon War, and I think we spoke about it at the time when our son Stefan was up there on the, in the war on the northern border. He said that, there was no way that the United Nations lookouts up there didn't see what was happening as it began to, open up there. So they've been involved right from day one, because, as I said, most of their workers are local. They hire local people who the majority of them are Muslims.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you been, I mean, they talk about, the ultimate solution is a two-state solution. In my view, that is not a solution, because in fact, they're not interested in two states. They want to see the end of Israel. So that statement to me just isn't a solution at all. Am I correct in that understanding?
Well, a friend of mine calls it the two-state delusion. And of course, for your viewers who are Christians, of course, that's not God's plan. There never was a Palestinian state in the Bible. The word Palestine actually comes from the word for the Philistines, who were always the enemy of God and His kingdom. So, and I'm actually writing a comment about that for my news report this week. And of course, we're being pushed very hard by our friends, even, America and the UK. David Cameron said they may even recognize a Palestinian state before it becomes one, to accelerate the process. So the people in the nations, they're really, they're not really opposing Israel and the Jewish people. It says so in Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? It's not against Israel and the Jewish people. It's against God and his anointed one, or his Messiah. So ultimately, what this is all about, and Christians should, if Christians really understood this, then hopefully they would be on the side of Israel and praying for Israel. Is that it's about the coming of the kingdom of God and the return of Jesus to Jerusalem, because that's where he's coming back to. And that's why, sadly, our Muslim Arab half bros or cousins as I truly see them, they've been deluded by by the kingdom of darkness to do everything they can to get rid of Israel, to redivide Jerusalem, to stop the second coming of the Messiah. So, having understood that, every Christian should be at least praying for a victory. And just to go back to your question, I see the only solution is a one-state solution. Israel, as it should be according to God and according to his covenant with Abraham, and give the opportunity to the Arabs to live under Israeli sovereignty. There's 1.5 million Arabs live inside Israel. And 80% of them are Muslim. And if you spoke to most of them, they wouldn't want to, they wouldn't want to live under Gaza control. They realize that life is better for them, as do the Bedouins and the Druze. They know that life is good for them under Israel, because Israel is not an apartheid state like we're being accused of. They really do have, there may be some areas where where there's a little bit of preference, but they have a good life. And so the people who live in Gaza and West Bank or Judea and Samaria, who are constantly trying to get rid of us, if they just broke free of the brainwashing that they are exposed to from the time they're, really from the time they're toddlers, and we're prepared to live in peace, we could have a great life here together. We really could, and as Israeli Arabs do.
Yeah. Just finally, from universities in the US to street protests in the UK to even some of the comments being made here in New Zealand, people have been shocked, I think, by the level of anti-Semitism that has been underlying all this. Are you surprised by it, or is it just more of the same?
Well, I mean, it's shocking for a start, and it's very sad to see, more for the sake of the people that are doing it, because they're going to be in big trouble with God. It really is more of the same, and it's not something new. And sadly, it's the history of the Jewish people. There's always someone out there who wants to destroy us, and there's a lot of wrong information and just misunderstanding about Israel and the Jewish people. And there's good and bad in all groups of people, and there are Jewish people who don't measure up. But most of the Jewish people, particularly here in Israel, we just want to live in peace. And we were, most of our people were quite happy to extend an arm or a hand of, peace to our Arab neighbors, but it was refused.
Yeah. David, first time we spoke about this, which was just after the atrocious attack, we quoted Psalm 122, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, peace be within your walls, and security within your towers. It's very appropriate scripture. For those who want to connect with you, David, just remind us of your website.
Yeah, the website is www.outofzion, all one word, .org. And if anybody wants to write, my email address is david@outofzion.org. So,
okay. And a reminder to our viewers that you're actually a Kiwi living in Israel with doing this fantastic ministry. Originally raised in, was it Morrinsville?
No, Auckland.
Oh, whoops. I was thinking of
I was born and bred and lived there most 33 or 34 years in Auckland before we came here. So we've been here in the north of Israel for 31, maybe coming up 32 years.
Yeah, and in my time on the breakfast show at Rima, you were my Israeli correspondent for 4 years. So there we are. That goes back to 2002.
Yeah, well, Bob, appreciate your interest and appreciate the opportunity to, give an perspective here from the top of Mount Carmel.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Good to catch up with you. I'm sure we'll be in touch again.
Okay, shalom.